Among the technical challenges that still need to be solved, the speed that parts can be made is one major area for improvement. While the process speed has improved significantly in comparison to many well-established industrial processing techniques, they need to be dramatically faster to be competitive in terms of processing time or processing speed. And additionally improving the accuracy and the control to enable finer surface finishes, to make parts more precisely for critical precision components without post-processing is another significant technical hurdle. In addition to that, being able to maintain consistency of the microstructure of the material is very important for high-performance components. Finally, there's a broad range of materials: titanium alloys, magnesium, ceramic materials, advanced polymer and polymer-based composite materials, that there's been significant ingrowth into being able to make parts out of these materials, but there are many, many, many more materials in these families that have yet to be produced in significant quantities.
The challenges that are often cited right now are the machine capabilities, their reliability, their speed, the scale of the product that they can produce, and the material limitations that we have today. All of those will be overcome in a fairly near timeline. The biggest challenge that I see is actually us, is the humans, the designers. How do we leverage this technology to do things that we haven't imagined before? And if you talk to people in industry, one of the biggest challenges they have is the education of their already trained workforce in leveraging the technologies. You know, how does an engineer who's been trained in machining and casting and forming think of a world that doesn't have screws or fasteners or draft angles or fillets? These things are the vocabulary of their profession, and suddenly they're irrelevant.
Whenever we have a new technology, if it has any kind of real significance, there are winners and there are losers. And we have to keep in mind that it's very difficult to predict ahead of time who the winners are going to be and who the losers are. In the case of this technology, it clearly privileges certain kinds of materials that can be used with the machinery that's involved. Other kinds of materials, the most obvious example will come to mind, wood, for example. Wood has no place in the additive manufacturing system. And yet, if you look around, you'll see it's still a material that we make a lot of use of. And the other thing is the kind of knowledge that's privileged or not privileged. Again, this kind of technology, like a lot of more recent technology, privileges abstract knowledge. It privileges knowledge that can be put into bits and bytes, whereas manufacturing and making things has traditionally depended also very heavily on what we call tacit knowledge. One of the things I don't hear any discussion of, which is, it has to be there at some point, for lack of a better term, we call it a discussion about power and authority. Any kind of manufacturing technology change means that different kinds of people end up with a certain amount of power or authority or control over the processes, and other people lose the authority and power. Again, that's not something that's necessarily bad, but it's something we need to be more conscious of. We need to think about what it means that skilled workers, for example, will no longer have a role, or what it means when people say, okay, this allows us to bring manufacturing back to, say, our own shores, because we can now do things rapidly and quickly. Again, okay, think about what the socioeconomic and even the geopolitical implications of that are.
Currently, as it stands now, it still is fairly labor intensive, both in terms of hardware and then as well as software. And then there has to be closer sort of a collaboration or partnership between clinical needs and then the technological needs. So institute like this, where we actually have clinicians working with engineers, are really ideal to move forward with this kind of platform. And then certainly on the biology side, in terms of understanding molecular aspects, biomaterials, and then cellular things, initially with printing simpler sort of a potentially replaceable organs, but ultimately one that has function that can replace functioning tissue. I think those are the sort of those will require quite a bit of work before that actually materializes.
It really requires the expertise of a lot of different fields to work together. On the medical side, to understand the clinical needs; on the material side, to develop the right plastics or right polymer materials or cell materials to really do an effective job. And then also on the engineering side, for the printer to work and to come up with these devices and organs in the future. So, and this of course is very cost intensive to have these groups working together effectively.
They look at this, rightfully so, this first 3D printer as a milestone. You know, it's the first time ever we've truly manufactured off planet Earth. And once you do that, that's when you change the mindset. So the mindset's the first thing you got to change. It's like with any big, great leaps forward. It's ourselves that are holding us back. Ourselves wondering, okay, if I wanted to create like a computer that was in my pocket that I could carry anywhere, how would that look like? And once once companies and entrepreneurs and engineers and innovators and governments, change the mindset, that's when you can start moving really forward on a pathway to change the way we think.
Sure. The largest technical barrier today ends up being the question of how to get this material qualified or validated. It's historically in aerospace, it's been a very laborious and long-term process that takes several thousand pounds of material, different lots, different heats, literally at the expense of millions of dollars for each alloy to be tested. What's taking place today to try to help overcome that barrier are the efforts that the DARPA team and the NAMI team are taking on to create modeling and simulation programs and prove those out so that those tests could be done offline using computational tools to predict those properties before you've ever built the first part. And if those are successful, it will be a game changer for the technology.